Okay. How's everybody doing today? Um, it's Conspiracy Brother here with Conservative Brother, episode 8 of the Uncomfy Truths political podcast.
Back
So
at it
we
again, man. It couldn't hold us down. How you doing?
we're just here to try to give you some new information, some different perspective, and touch on some topics that are current right now in the news and kind of in the community. And by community, I mean the global community, the national community. We got elections coming up, so midterms are fastly approaching, and so we just kind of give a pulse of what's going on around the country.
A lot to discuss. A lot to discuss, conspiracy brother. And they don't call, obviously, a few weeks going into the midterms, or a week technically. They don't call it October surprise for nothing. So there's been no shortage of headlines. It seems like 5-10 years ago. Obviously, politics went pop culture in the era of Trump. So it seems like the amount of polarization and hype, it wasn't like this 5-6 years ago. So it seems like what it seems like everything that would happen within 6 months or a year happens within a week. Like so much shit that's, I wouldn't say groundbreaking, but just the level of just over sensationalism and all that. Usually you get that in 6 months or a year, maybe 10 years ago. It seems like we're getting that every week now. So I think, Conspiracy Brother, you were getting a little bit more of that feedback again, like kind of crackly. So I'm not sure if you could tweak some things
Let's
maybe
see.
with your equipment at the moment. But
Is it? Are you still experiencing it now that I'm
yeah,
talking?
yeah, yeah, it's back. And I'm just not sure. I mean, I can hear it. I don't know if they'll end up being in the recording, but I know I could, hear that. But if you can just okay. So what I was trying to do, Conspiracy Brother has to hop out, come back in. I should have had him add me on the screen share, but once he gets back, okay, perfect. All right, good. So we're waiting on Conspiracy Brother. I'm just going to kind of kick things off. Elon obviously has acquired the bird. The bird is freed, as he said. So it's official. Elon Musk closed Twitter deal. As of Friday, he took over Twitter. He went into the hall of Twitter, literally carrying a kitchen sink. So Elon, if anything, you got to give credit where credit's due. Similar to Donald Trump and then also Kanye West, they are masters at grabbing attention. They know how to get the attention. Love them or hate them. There's still some problems I have with Ye. There's still some problems I have with Elon. But either way, the guy knows how to get attention and to work and manipulate. I want to say work and manipulate, but also work the market. So he came in. He came into Twitter on Friday afternoon, literally carrying a kitchen sink, and a lot of people are speculating that can mean either, everything's going out, including the kitchen sink, and then also other people are saying like, hey, he's trying to, sort of hint at, let that sink in. So all you little Twitter leftist communists, let it sink in that Elon is taking over. So I think it's it's kind of a little master showman, a little cocky, but I think that's what Elon's about. As far as that echelon goes, like along with Ye and Trump, they want to get attention either way, love them or hate them. So, Conspiracy Brother, uh, how's your audio? You want to say anything? I can see
Yeah.
how your audio.
Is it still causing any issues, or can you hear me more clearly now?
You're back. Just speak a little louder into the mic, but yeah, you're back. No
Okay.
feedback.
Okay. Let's
Yeah,
see.
go ahead and Conspiracy Brother, give us your thoughts on the the new what I like to call Muskageddon. I don't know if that's been coined yet. I'm gonna try and coin that on Twitter. But Muskageddon on Twitter. Go ahead.
Is my volume okay?
Yeah, your volume's perfect right there. And
Okay.
you're coming in clear. So you're good to go.
So, we've talked about Elon a bit on this show. We talked about him a couple months ago. We talked about whether he's a Trojan horse or whether he's sincerely on the side of free speech and empowering the people, and, anti censorship, or whether this is a ploy to, um, you know, essentially make money off of like the popular mood.
Hmm.
And we kind of came away with at least as far as I remember, with the impression that some of what he does is a bit of both. He might be able to uh, play the game of a free speech advocate and a individual freedom advocate, and simultaneously be trying to monetize that sentiment. And I think when you look at what he wants to do with Twitter, I think when you look at Twitter as a whole, with this social media platform is able to do, and what it has been able to do, and what the potential for it is, what he said himself, because he wants to call it X, the X Everything app, which is he wants to create like a payment app, and there's potential rumor that he's going to be trying to make like a YouTube competitor clone, somewhere where you may be able to stream long form videos onto Twitter directly, and advertise or monetize those videos. And so like some of that is still like he talked about specifically, in China they use something called WeChat, and I forget the other one. But like in China, you just pay with your phone, it's digital. So you just, I suppose if you're a foreigner or whatever, you can still use paper currency, but like that's what his intention is. So I think for people to be so frightened about him taking over in a way that they weren't when it was just Jack Dorsey and everybody who was already on there being authoritarian and censoring
Mhm.
people and anti free speech, shows what really is at stake in this situation. And I think it also shows that they weren't really, really, really good people to begin with. Because when you understand that, um, like Twitter allows people to share opinions and information, primarily via text, in a way that Facebook doesn't, in a way that Facebook gets bogged down with, my grandmother sharing pictures of herself, or, not my grandmother specifically, but just, in that kind of
Mhm.
way that Facebook is very interaction based in a very superficial way. Twitter
Mhm.
has the potential to be all encompassing in a way that Facebook isn't, in a way that isn't superficial, that information is given very directly, and without any kind of distractions. And so, I'm happy that the situation is being disrupted by his purchase, but at the same time, I'm still cautious about how much good he will actually do, because ultimately he wants to make money. And when you look at social media, the product is the people. So we're all the money. We're the product. The interactions, sharing your location, sharing your likes and dislikes. What are you watching? What are you talking about? What are you engaging in? That's the product. And so, how much do we want these companies to have access into our lives, or more
Mhm.
access? Because we all have phones, and they're all listening to us. And when you talk, you'll go Google, and what you were talking about will pop up. So,
Yeah. Well said. Well said, conspiracy brother. We were catching a little bit more feedback. We caught everything you said, but that feedback was starting to creep back in there. But yeah, most definitely. I think the one thing we got to remember is, once again, Elon Musk is that wild card. He is that Trojan horse, very similar to kind of Trump. And yeah, a lot of people may not like the comparison, but we do have to see this as a short term win. Like, I'm in the case of Elon Musk, I'm short term optimistic, but long term I'm a little pessimistic. On kind of what his long term intentions are. Obviously, we know his ties. He does have ties to World Economic Forum. I think he may have been one of the young global leaders under George Soros or Klaus Schwab. I do like the ideas of, kind of innovating Twitter. I don't think we need to up and just call it something else, like go take it from Twitter to X. But I think he does have some very good innovative ideas that could breathe in some new life to the company. Obviously, once this new content moderation board meets, there will be some talk, I'm sure, about certain reinstatements, or obviously being able to open it up to more free speech. So I'm cautiously optimistic on the short term. Long term, I'm not. We're not sure where Elon's going with this. And like I said, Twitter's not the end all be all. There's plenty of other platforms we can go to as well, because it will be a slow burn. It's not just going to be like open the floodgates. Alex Jones, you're back. I think in the case of Trump, Trump would probably be dumb to actually go back to Twitter, because to be honest, there's only people on Truth Social just because of Trump. So really, to have just Trump just say, "Okay, I'll go back on to Twitter," is just going to deem Truth Social irrelevant, and that's like his baby, you know. And basically, like I said, with Twitter, this article kind of talks about, once again, there's going to be a moderation board forming. Former President Trump and a range of others, especially far right figures and conspiracy mongers. I just love this deadline variety, just very Hollywood skewed. But once again, there's conservative pundit news apps out there as well. But conspiracy mongers like Alex Jones and David Duke have permanently been banned from Twitter. Trump's ouster stemmed from his behavior on January 6th. Obviously, he went on to create his own platform, Truth Social. It has attained a decidedly modest following to date. Just a smugness. Musk has described himself as free speech absolutionist and has long vowed to restore voices to the platform and has indicated that Trump will be amongst those he'd like to see reprieved. So without like getting into the weeds, that was pretty brief. Yeah, so I think we kind of pretty much hit on what we need to hit on there. Unless there was anything else, conspiracy brother, you wanted to add before we move on.
No, I think pretty much hit on it very well.
Okay, cool. And once again, your feedback, that sound issue is back again. It was really kind of hard to understand, but at the same time, I did catch that you wanted to move on. So I don't see if you could try and tweak something else with your mic, conspiracy brother. But I'll start with the next topic. I'm a young teacher. My students say I go from a 6 to a 10 when I wear short dresses. Do you agree? And this is the this is the era that we're in. And what I love is that this is so timely. I want to say timely. Obviously, we've been knowing about this for years, but as far as these teachers sleeping with their student scandal. But if you guys go back, there's a brilliant, if you're familiar with comedian Paul Mooney, he did Negro Demons and Ask a Black Guy on Chappelle's show, but he was a longtime comedian, wrote for Richard Pryor, a lot of other people. And he did, he talked about this 15 years ago in 2007 about like, hey, the teacher's a freak, the teachers are fucking the students. And this is just further evidence that has been even more hyperventilated with social media, the thirst for attention, teachers on TikTok. Teachers were just boring, mundane when I was in school. We didn't know about their personal lives, let alone their sexual orientation. They weren't trying to get clout. They were literally the teacher. I think I remember even bringing an apple to a teacher a couple times. Like it was that sort of mundane back then. The teachers weren't trying to compete on TikTok with their students. And it just goes to show just the level of demoralization. So read, one woman says her rating from 6 to 10 with one tweak in her sartorial choices. So fucked up. Ava Jones is a digital content creator. Ava Jones is a digital content creator with 22,000 followers. She took to TikTok to share her risque look. In the video, she wore a black skirt, black blazer, fitted brown top. My students say I go from a 6 to a 10 in a short dress. In the next scene, she let her hair down, took her glasses off, and revealed in her short dress. Are they right? She inquired. This is grooming, followed by a young teacher. Viewers weighed in on the rating in the comments section. Pretty sure my math says you're 10 by 10 in anything, and Admirer wrote. OMG, that's cute, Jones replied. You might be 12 with a shorter one. Okay, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's hard even for me to get through this article. Okay, Jones responded. Others inquired how someone could dress so revealing in front of students. Okay, do you really let them tell you that? One commenter asked. Yeah, why? Students wrote. Students, another wrote. How the hell do they concentrate? Ha ha. Good question. See that's this is the era we're in, man. Just this level of, I want to call it entitlement. It's just delusion. It's kind of mixed with mental illness and grooming. I get it. You're hot. You could be like an Instagram, TikTok model. But why are you in teaching? You're not in it for the teaching. You're in it for the likes, the attention. Just go off and be an Instagram model. But why are you up here acting like you're trying to be Mother Teresa teaching kids when you have no business even displaying this sort of behavior in front of kids? So once again, I'm not a parent as of yet, but conspiracy brother, go ahead and give us your talk, your feedback on this. It's ridiculous.
Hopefully, it's no feedback. Is there feedback?
No, you're good. You're back. No, no, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. So what you said about the grooming situation, that was my first thought, because when you look at the wider implications of like this kind of behavior, and then you know about accounts like Lives of TikTok, and you see different teachers and educators or whatever who engage in this kind of behavior where they're trying to get their students to not only tolerate their identity, their sexual choices or preferences or whatever, but then to participate.
Mm.
Right. Oh, I tell my students I'm non-binary, and I make my students pick a gender when they come into class every day, and those kinds of things are inappropriate for a student-teacher relationship. Just like this is inappropriate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why are your students telling you that you look better when your clothes are shorter? Why is that a conversation that you feel comfortable to have with students? And I can't think of an age where it's appropriate, because either they're very small children,
Mm-hmm.
you know, elementary school, they're in a very hormonal age between like, sixth grade to like 10th grade. And then they're still students. They're still, you know, children, but they're 18, 17, and they're older. So then it becomes a problem, because now something could happen because there's a means, right? And so this is a situation we look at what's always the affirmation idea, right? When you affirm someone's choices, when you want to affirm people's decisions, and when you want to be supportive and not
Mm-hmm.
critical of people, you create this kind of situation. She should be fired. I am a parent. She should be fired, because
Mm-hmm.
this is not appropriate behavior for a teacher-student relationship or interaction or whatever you want to call it. This isn't something that you should feel comfortable as a teacher having your students comment on, let alone taking their commentary and adjusting your clothing in a way that is more approved of by them.
Mm.
Because
Great
that shows
point.
the decline of where we are as a society. You know, you want to have, like, you see these. Oh, you if you come to school and you don't want your parents to know that you're trans, or that you have a different identity, or that you have a different name, we won't tell your parents, and all. Like, you create a situation wherein the quote unquote conspiracy theorists are proven correct.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Everyone who believes that the government is trying to infiltrate our homes and families, everyone who believes that the government is trying to overstep the family unit and trying to destroy the family unit for a nefarious purpose, is proven correct by these types of allowances, by these types of individuals, by these types of teachers. We talk about a liberal agenda or a left-wing agenda or a radical left-wing agenda, whether that exists or not in any great numbers. The fact that these people are used to project to everybody else that this is happening proves the conspiracy theorists, at least as it pertains to this specific issue, correct. And the conservatives who believe, that there is overreach, right? Because for the most part, I'm sure there majority of teachers are in the middle. Majority of teachers are trying to teach. But when you have these people on the front lines, this is the vanguard of your profession now. This is going to be what people think.
Yeah. Yeah, well said, man, and definitely, it just goes back to the adage that people talk about: the left doesn't have kids; they have yours. Now, whether this girl, obviously she's a young, to what most people would deem an attractive young lady, whether it's a combination of mental illness or just like dopamine attention seeking behavior. I think it's kind of a combination of both. Now, she kind of DMing a student and like trying to like have sex with a student, we don't know. We don't have the evidence, but do I think it's a combination of perhaps some groomer mental illness she's not aware of, and then also she just wants the attention? I think it's a combination of all these factors, and it's just sad. So much to say on that. It's just, once again, this has been talked about last 10, 15 years. Like I mentioned, Paul Mooney called it out years ago. And then a lot of other comedians. So moving on, we just want to stay on time. Next topic, we have Chris Red out of the hospital after street attack. Speaking of red dresses, Chris Red. He had a weekend show canceled. Apparently, comedian Chris Red, who was attacked outside of the Comedy Cellar, a famous comedy club out in New York, Greenwich Village, on Wednesday night, has been released from the hospital. They said that the former cast member, that the former SNL cast member at New York City Winery on Sunday has been canceled. That was a show. Show's been canceled due to unforeseen conflict. Obviously, this is the third gig that Red has missed since the attack, which I wasn't even aware of. I saw this article yesterday. Comedian didn't perform on Wednesday night. He had to cancel another show. Blah blah blah. Per multiple reports, Red was cold cocked by a male assailant on Wednesday night as he approached the front door of the club where he was scheduled to perform. There is no known motive for the assault, which police characterize as occurring without prior conversation or provocation. Former SNL member was left with a facial laceration and later admitted to the hospital. Uh, Dorman told, I don't know, maybe his representative, deeply upset by what happened and hope he's okay. Next show's listed on Red's website November 11th. For the assailant, he got away. Authorities have since released a photo of the suspect, hoping to capture him. Now, I know we don't have all the details, and I know everybody has their own thoughts, but this just kind of goes on a bigger macro level. We are in New York City. We are in an area where, Mayor Eric Adams continues, along with a lot of the left Democrats, continue to champion open borders, soft on crime, no gun laws. It's becoming more and more Los Angeles and New York's the wild, wild west. So I don't know the whole situation. I don't know who was involved with Chris Red. I don't know if he's trying to pull a Jussie Smollett. He could have just been randomly attacked on the street. But odds are it probably is maybe a case of just what they call random acts of violence, unless Chris has some other lifestyle we don't know about, or maybe somebody mad owes him money. We can figure that out. But all I know right now is that it doesn't help when New York increasingly the crime is increasing. They're sort of let loose, soft on crime. So that's just sort of my take. We still got to get more information, but this happening in New York just doesn't surprise me. And I know a lot of the people on the left who vote for these policies are still shocked at all the crime rising and rising. So that's just my thoughts, conspiracy brother. What about you?
Yeah, I think really kind of what you were alluding
Oh,
to.
your feedback. I'm sorry, man. Your
It's
feedback.
bad.
It's Yeah, it's bad again. Maybe do some adjusting.
What about now?
It's Are you using a mic or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Fairly
mic.
maybe a month old.
Yeah, it's like hard to even hear you. It's very staticky.
Let's see.
Try going without the mic because I don't know what's. I hate for you to give your explanation, but then it sounds like this in the recording. It's like really hard to understand you. Yeah.
Is it more clear?
Hello.
Yes. Is it more clear now?
Yeah, that is perfect. That's perfect. I just had to say maybe hang up the mic for now, but yeah, you sound perfectly clear. Just speak a little louder.
So
Yeah.
it's this is the second mic. I bought a mic. I had a mic, and I bought a new mic.
Okay,
And
just speak
so
a little louder into the mic, but you're clear now.
I'm not I'm conspiracy brother, so I assume that something is going on because this mic is probably less than 2 months old.
Yeah,
But
man. At this point, we might as well. Man, I don't know how the deep state of the feds. They're up here on StreamYard. You'd think they would
yeah,
have static me out being conservative, but I don't know. But
yeah.
keep going. You sound better now.
But yeah, I mean, this is essentially the chickens coming home to roost. Is what I think you were alluding to in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because you have policies that like the guy in New York who had been charged with like assault 40 something times, but because of the new bail law that they passed, the judge is not allowed to or is not supposed to without some extra clearance or motivation uh, uh, consider past convictions or past lockups as it pertains to incarceration or bond or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just, you know, what happens on both sides of the political aisle is they take the easiest path forward. And with a lot of laws, and especially when it comes to public safety, that's
Mm-hmm.
usually not a good idea, right? We being a legislator requires a lot of thought and careful planning and compassion that I feel like a lot of our elected officials don't have. And so they just, oh, well, you know, if bail has been abused, then we'll just make no bail. And it's just like, well, you can't have a blanket statement either way. You shouldn't be locking everybody up without any chance of bail, whether they're guilty or innocent. But you also shouldn't be letting everybody out without bail, you know, because they can't afford to post bail. I mean, we have to figure out how to make meaningful policies to keep people safe. Because what you see is that the government is essentially worthless because they don't protect us,
Mm-hmm.
right? The elected officials, the politicians, whoever that we put in positions of power to do this work are not doing their jobs, and nobody's being fired. There's no mechanism to hold them accountable.
Well said. Well said. It's definitely I like how you mentioned the chickens coming home to roost. Once again, I'm as much as I may not like or not like a celebrity, I'm a fan of Chris Red. I think he was pretty funny on the show for a little while. Wish he stayed a little longer. I feel like Kenan Thompson coming up on 20 years on SNL. It seemed like every other black guy on the show, they only get like 3-4 years. It's like, you know, Kenan, you know, step down already, you know. let another black man have some shine. But either way, like I think if this is like what it is, and literally somebody just attacked them on the street, it's something that shouldn't have happened. I'm definitely upset about the fact that this is, you know, this person's probably gonna be out on cashless bail. But obviously, said the suspect got away. But yeah, it's just hopefully, you know, I'd say hopefully, but probably not. But it seems like people have to wait for, once again, whether it's migrants showing up in Martha's Vineyard, whether it's a suspect breaking into Clarence Avant's house. He was the Black Godfather on the Netflix special. Uh, a homeless person to somebody crazy broke in his house, shot his wife. Uh, you know, these things are going to keep happening, and people can't seem to just sort of put two and two together on the policies, the politicians you stand behind that are indirectly causing this. So that's all I'm going to say there. Next topic, moving on. Conspiracy Brothers shared a great article about, you know, the world's largest sugar producer extends export restrictions. So if you can go ahead and actually, if you want to read the article, it's not too long, or you can just maybe give us just some insight on this development.
I'll read it. I'll start at
Yep.
the top. So India, the world's biggest sugar producer, has extended a ban on exports on the product by a further year until October 2023. Reuters reported, citing a government notification. Quote, restriction on export of sugar, raw, refined, and white sugar is extended beyond October 31st, 2022 till October 31st, 2023, or until further orders, whichever is earlier. Other conditions will remain unchanged, end quote. A notification from the Directorate General of Foreign Trade announced on Friday. In May, New Delhi restricted exports of sugar through the end of the current month to tackle the rise in domestic price that followed record high exports of the sweetener. The restrictive measure, which has been imposed for the first time in 6 years, capped exports at 10 million tons. India's sugar exports reportedly surged by 57% to 8.6 billion tons until May of the ongoing 21-22 marketing year ending in September. Earlier this month, the government and industry officials said India, the second largest exporter behind Brazil, was expected to produce a record sugar crop in 2022, which will allow the nation to export up to 8 million tons. After diverting nearly 4.5 million tons of sugar for ethanol production, India is expected to manufacture some 36.5 million tons of the commodity in the 2022-2023 season, up 2% from the previous season. So that is it. Just to give my comments immediately, with this news, and posted an article yesterday I sent it to you talking about how diesel fuel, there's a 25-day supply of diesel fuel left here in the U.S. You see these shortages are kind of compounding.
Mm-hmm.
And so these issues are going to cause problems for the common person, right? In France, they already have a restriction on fuel. I believe it's either a quarter tank or a half a tank in France. If you have a half tank or quarter tank in France, you cannot fill your car up any more than that. So there are long lines, hours long lines at French gas stations because there's a restriction on fuel and they're turning people away if you have it's either a quarter or half a tank or more. And so this is kind of plays into the conspiratorial belief of the globalist World Economic Forum and other groups who would like to see, the Great Reset, who would like to see global society crumble. Right? You'll own nothing and love it, or whatever they say. Klaus Schwab and the like, because what happens is the wealthy, even with inflated currency, right? The wealthy have so much money that they're able to purchase things irrespective of inflation, right? It doesn't affect them, right? And so the common people suffer. They want you to eat bugs. They want you they claim they want you to buy electric vehicles. They speak nothing of the precious minerals and metals that will be needed to create electric vehicles at that scale, right? They don't want you to be able to go where you would like to go because, like one of the examples I always give people, let's say you live in South Florida, it's hurricane season, and you have to evacuate, and you have an EV. How far can you go before you need to recharge?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think the longest range on an EV is about 250 miles. That is about a quarter of the length of Florida, or half of the length of Florida, I believe. Might be a third, but that's not long enough. And so you'll be in a situation where you need to charge, and they don't charge quickly. And so, this is a pipe dream, and it's intended to further restrict the movement of a free people globally, right? And I'm not speaking of Americans or Canadians, but I'm speaking of free people globally. I believe that all of us should be free in whichever country we live to express ourselves and do what we would like to do to achieve our happiness, so long as it doesn't infringe on the rights of others. So this is a part of that plan to destabilize global society.
Yeah, most definitely, man. And I'd say once again, like I said, I'm not like a hardcore either or. I like the option of both. But yeah, this once again goes to show that these diesel shortages, which we know are intentional, the Biden administration colluding with other different, shadow partners. Obviously, they're creating the crisis. I think Biden's been, either selling off the oil reserve or whatever it is. So I understand where if there's a hurricane situation, yeah, there are going to be situations where gas stations are backed up for hours or people run out of gas. The fact that I think you mentioned in France how they're doing gas rations. This goes back to condition people to live with less, do what you're told. Going back to like March 2020 pandemic, I remember going to the grocery stores and seeing on the shelf limit 2 items. So they're gonna do the same thing with the gas shortages. So even with I'm not even opposed to owning an electric car one day, maybe having it as an option. There's nothing wrong with presenting an alternative source where once again, even right now with gas prices being high in different places, including California, yeah, once again, these are people driving around their Priuses. They are saving money. They got to charge their cars a little longer, and they got to make sure that's charged up. But yeah, they are saving money on the gas tip. But then it goes back to your point when you come to these disaster situations, or when we start going toward more of a social credit system state, where hey, you didn't do enough, you set this on Facebook, or you did this, so we have to limit where you can drive, or the power grid. California's grid is overblown. You can only drive between 7 to 7 today, or you can't drive at all today. You have to kind of weigh those things out. I don't have a problem with owning an electric car one day alongside my other gas powered vehicle. I'll take advantage of both. There'll be situations where gas runs out. Yeah, the electric car comes in handy. And there's going to be situations where electric grid goes out. There's nowhere to charge your car. So that gas car comes in handy. So I'm down for both. I don't like the whole, like you mentioned, California by 2035, all cars will be electric, and kind of force shoehorning you into, like, cattling you into this way, which isn't sufficient, which once again leads you to owning less, to being more dependent upon a system. And that's where I have my problem with, of course, with this diesel shortage and whatnot. Yeah, so definitely great words on that. Moving on to the next topic, from the Children's Health Defense. We actually have here, I don't know where it went. Oh, right over here. Basically, I think I saw an article about the CDC. Recently, it was shown that they were like hiding data. This website can be often convoluted. So I literally had the article here, but now it's like sort of buried within all these other sub articles. But I think I saw it here. It says something about the CDC. Uh, at this point, we can kind of touch on this for a small amount. But yeah, let's just go ahead and I guess conspiracy brother. Yeah, here it is. Basically, CDC delayed myocarditis reports. Obviously, these are things we've known about. There's a recent interview with Dr. Brian Hooker. I'm not familiar with him, but we've been on top of this for like going on a year and a half. Basically, conspiracy brother, did you want to maybe give your thoughts on the current state of, at least on the COVID side of things, of the CDC, and there turns out they've been delaying myocarditis reports, and Pfizer, of course, was trying to delay findings for 75 years. You can just go ahead and give us your general feedback, kind of where we at with the state of affairs with all that.
So I was watching a podcast, or I was listening to a podcast. I forget which one, and it might have been Chris Hedges, but it could have been Jimmy Dore. I'm not sure. But they were saying basically, can they see the CDC ever recovering its public image?
No.
And I don't see it ever coming back, because when you look at like what you're saying, and even with Pfizer, right? If you look at the European Union, at the legislature, there was a lady, her name was Janine Smalls, testified at the European Parliament that Pfizer did not actually test the vaccines for transmissibility, right? So whether they would actually limit transmissibility between infected and non-infected people. That wasn't one of the things they did when they released it to the public. And she said the reason they didn't is because they had to move at the speed of science. That's quote. They had to move at the speed of science.
Right.
So every time you heard someone on the news, Rachel Maddow, or any of those people saying, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, saying that when you get the shot, you can't transmit it to other people. Do this for the grandmas, and do this for my neighbor, and all this other. It wasn't true. And when I say it wasn't true, I don't mean that it did not do anything at all. What I mean is they had no idea one way or the other. They were lying because they didn't know. And so, along with this, of course, they're keeping data secret because they want you to get the shot. Now, the question is whether they believe this virus is so dangerous that it requires everyone to be vaccinated or not. Or is there some other nefarious purpose that they're requiring everybody to be vaccinated?
Well, I think we all
trying to make everyone. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the situation you're in, where you have to ask yourself that question. And we see now that it isn't that dangerous, right? That Omicron is not that dangerous. That it is essentially presents itself as a typical cold, right? And we understand that it is more transmissible now, but it is less fatal, and that even with vaccinations, even with boosters, you look at transmissibility, infection rates, and they're about the same between people who are vaccinated and who are not, and people who have natural immunity still fare better than people who are vaccinated. And then, I don't know if we have this article, but we don't need to necessarily bring this up just for me to make my point. You find out that the Boston University is performing gain of function by taking the alpha variant of COVID and taking the spike from that and mixing it with the transmissibility of Omicron, and it makes the virus 80% more deadly.
Like, did we not learn our lesson with Wuhan? It just kind of blows my mind. Like, keep going, but I just wanted to,
Well, yeah,
like,
I mean,
common sense rationality standpoint. What the
those,
fuck
those
is Boston University thinking? You know?
and those people need to be fired.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You need to be fired. You need to be put in jail, because what you're doing at that point, and like Jon Stewart, for all his faults, he's got some very clever and poignant points. And when he was on Stephen Colbert's show, the Late Show, he said, don't have to trust the science. And he said, something, I'm paraphrasing, something to the effect of, science has a way of saving us from the problems that science has created. He said, like the expression, curiosity killed a cat. And he said, and scientists will say, well, let's kill 1,000 cats to find out why. And that's what science is not just benevolent practice. Science just wants to understand. And so there's a very inhuman or unfeeling, amoral dimension to it, because science just wants to know why. And so there's, like with Fauci and those dogs with the sand fleas eating puppy faces. He just got to figure out whatever he's testing for, irrespective of what this does to the animal, right? Because we could wait and hope to find sand fleas in an environment naturally attacking an animal and whatever to understand it better. But no, science doesn't wait. Science needs to know. And so science does this. The same with the syphilis, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, right? A lot of people think they did that experiment to figure out a cure for syphilis. There was already a cure for syphilis. They did this so they could see the stages of progression of syphilis in an adult in a scientific setting. So they gave these black men in Tuscaloosa syphilis or Tuskegee syphilis so they could track what happens when a person gets syphilis and it's untreated over a period of time in a scientific environment. That's science. That is science. Science is, hey, we got to save everybody. Science is, hey, we made this vaccine and it's going to make us $100 billion projected. We're going to release this information in 170 years or whatever that shit was. Science is, hey, don't talk about myocarditis and how males between the ages of 18 and 40 have an increased risk of an enlarged heart, because we stand to make a lot of money. Science is, let's rush out a vaccine that we've never really tested to the level of other quote unquote vaccines, right? Because they changed the definition of vaccine for this when it really should be labeled a therapeutic. But let's rush out this brand new technology that uses DNA and RNA to implant a virus into your body before we have a good understanding about the long-term effects, what it does to your DNA, what it does to your RNA, or what it does to your body, your genetics. Does it cause any long-term problems? Because we stand to make money and or fame. That's science. We have this idea that all scientists are nerds who are caring and compassionate. And Lex Luthor was a scientist.
Right. Good tip. I think that's the quote of the day. Like, we were made to believe that scientists versus all these nerds. Oh man, it's great. Great tip, man. We got to move on to the next topic, but definitely those of you that are awake, definitely keep pop into children'shealthdefense.org. This is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s group. Obviously, a lot of interviews, a lot of content. I want to spend 6 to 8 hours a day on it, but maybe watch one interview a week, read a few articles a week. All of it's here. So only people that are afraid of this website are the people that are already told by big tech and mainstream media, oh, RFK, Children's Health Defense, they're a conspiracy. All the information's here. They're afraid of people laying down the facts in these videos, in these interviews, and on these articles that pretty much burst whatever myth MSM's trying to put up. All right, so our next topic, conspiracy brother, I'd like you to lead this. I got to step out for just 2 minutes, but basically Russia says UK Navy blew up Nord Stream. London denies involvement. So if you wanted to kind of maybe just set this up, I got to step out for just a minute or two. But yeah, go ahead and tell us about this. What's going on here?
I'll pull the article up on my phone and read it, and then that way you don't have to worry about scrolling.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll be back in a minute. Yep.
Okay. So, pardon me, give me one. So, per Reuters, right? Russia says UK Navy blew up Nord Stream pipeline. London denies involvement. This is by Guy Falconbridge and Sachin Ravikumar. Okay. So this is an image. Gas leak at Nord Stream 2 as seen from the Danish F-16 interceptor on Bornholm, Denmark, September 27, 2022. Danish Defense Command. Russia says UK Navy personnel blew up pipelines. Russia says UK Navy personnel helped attack Crimea. Russia does not give evidence for claim. This is what Reuters is saying. Britain denies Russia's claim. Russia says it will seek UN attention. Russia's defense ministry said on Saturday that British Navy personnel blew up the Nord Stream gas pipelines last month, a claim that London said was false and designed to distract from Russian military failures in Ukraine. Russia did not give evidence for its claim that a leading NATO member had sabotaged critical Russian infrastructure amid the worst crisis in relations between the West and Russia since the depths of the Cold War. The Russian ministry said that British specialists from the same unit directed Ukrainian drone attacks on ships of Russian Black Sea Fleet in Crimea earlier on Saturday. That is, they were largely repelled by Russian forces with minor damage to a Russian minesweeper. According to available information, representatives of the unit of the British Navy took part in the planning, provision, and implementation of a terrorist attack in the Baltic Sea on September 26th this year, blowing up the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 gas pipelines, the ministry said. To distract from the disastrous handling of the illegal invasion of Ukraine, the Russian Ministry of Defense is resorting to peddling false claims of an epic scale, the British Defense Ministry said. This invented story says more about the arguments going on inside the Russian government than it does about the West, Maria Zakharova, a spokeswoman for Russian Foreign Ministry, said Moscow will seek a reaction from the UN Security Council, saying on social media, Moscow wanted to draw attention to, a series of terrorist attacks committed against the Russian Federation in the Black and Baltic Seas, including the involvement of Britain in them, Russia, deeply isolated by Western nations since February 24th invasion of Ukraine, has previously blamed the West for the explosions that ruptured the Russian-built Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipelines on the bed of the Baltic Sea. But it had not previously given specific details of who it thinks was responsible for the damage to the pipelines, previously the largest routes for Russian gas supplies to Europe. A sharp drop in pressure on both pipelines was registered on September 26th, and seismologists detected explosions, triggering a wave of speculation about sabotage to one of Russia's most important energy corridors. Reuters has not been able to immediately verify any of the conflicting claims about who was to blame for the damage. It says Sweden and Denmark have both concluded that 4 leaks on Nord Stream 1 and 2 were caused by explosions, but have not said who might be responsible. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has called the damage an act of sabotage. Sweden has ordered additional investigations be carried out into the damage done to the pipelines. The prosecutor in charge of the case said in a statement on Friday. The Kremlin has repeatedly said allegations of Russian responsibility for the damage was, stupid, and Russian officials have said Washington had a motive as it wants to sell more liquefied natural gas to Europe. The United States has denied involvement. And so I think we could end it there. It's just a little more, but I think we could end it there.
And I'm back, conspiracy brother. What?
Okay. Mm-hmm. So what I'll say, just based on some of my information, I have another article that I read that gives a little bit more detail about why they think the British were involved, saying that they were performing exercises in that area and some other things like that. So Reuters, they're a mouthpiece of the establishment globally, and so whatever the establishment agenda is for the globalists and whatever, they're going to push that agenda. So they'll say this was not a pro-Russian channel or sentiment, but we stand for truth and we stand for freedom for the global community. And so I'm just stating the facts that I'm stating. What also needs to be recognized is, because it's tried to be stated that, oh, Russia did this, they sabotaged their own pipeline. Russia has control of the tap. So if they wanted to stop Europe from getting gas, they would have just turned them off. They didn't have to blow them up. You don't have to invent a situation where you create this level of damage, right? On top of that, right, I heard it reported, or I'd seen it reported, that they had concluded who had actually taken out the pipelines, but they were keeping it secret. Sweden and Denmark, they didn't want Russia to take part in the investigation. Now, if it were Russia that had done it, they would have just said, hey, Russia did this, and here's our evidence. And that's what you have to remember. But because they haven't announced who is guilty yet, you have to believe that it isn't Russia or a Russian ally, right? It may not be the U.S., but it is a Western ally, because it's very unlikely that they would keep that secret if it were actually Russia. If they had evidence to show that Russia had actually committed this act. Not to mention, there is a Turk Stream pipeline that connects Russia to Turkey and delivers gas. Russia is in the process of making Turkey its head of gas distribution for Europe. And there was an attempt to sabotage the Turk Stream pipeline. Russia apprehended the individuals trying to sabotage Turk Stream pipeline. So you see this happening all around, right? Even in Turkey, right? Or on the pipeline between Russia and Turkey. It doesn't make sense for Russia, right? It doesn't make sense. Like if you were trying to get into your house, would you kick your door in, or would you use a key? It's the same situation. If I want to turn off the pipes, I'm gonna just turn the knob. I'm not going to blow up the pipe because Russia has already said, hey, we'll build the pipes back. We'll turn them back on. We'll build them back. They're not so severely damaged that they can't be repaired quickly and efficiently. And nobody has done that. Not to mention the U.S. Anthony Blinken said this is a great opportunity for United States liquid natural gas suppliers, right? And I'm going to go back a little bit to what we were talking about with gas earlier. French President Emmanuel Macron is even upset now at the U.S. because he says we, as a nation, are able to produce gas, and we're able to offer subsidies to gas manufacturers in America so that we won't feel the same pressure and pinch of the gas restrictions that they feel in Europe. He's upset now because his people are upset. And the French people, cowards as they have been in the past, specifically with World War II and all that, they do like to protest. They do like to mess up their communities. They do like to turn their streets up. And so he understands that very soon we could have, a revolution of 1780, or a revolution of like the July Revolution, or a revolution of, you know what I'm saying? So it could change very, very quickly for him at any moment. And so he's responding to the grievances of his people, because he was very, very pro sanctions on Russia. He was very, very pro Ukraine, fund Ukraine, whatever the cost, fight to the last Ukrainian. But as the theme of this, the chickens are coming home to roost for Europe, and we'll see if this winter is cold, which I'm expecting it to be, because I know here we've had a kind of a warm fall, and I feel like when you have a warm fall, your winter and your spring are severe. So we'll see.
I'll go down. Winter's coming.
I'll let you give your comment if you have any.
Oh no, I think you wrapped it up in a great way. I'm not that well versed as far as some foreign relation topics. It just seems like at this point it's kind of like the pipeline wars. Who attacked this? Oh, they did that. I didn't do this, or this happened to blow up here. Who was behind that? So I think you painted like a great sort of macro picture. Obviously, micro and macro perspective is important, but I think the bigger macro thing we got to keep in mind is that who does it benefit? Whether I did this, whether they did it intentionally or not, or somebody else did it. Usually it's kind of sabotage from within. Is usually my Well, I suspect obviously the U.S. has some involvement, but we got to always think about who benefits from a macro standpoint long term. And I think we kind of know the answer to that. Definitely more developments on that as it comes in. But I still appreciate the perspective. Moving on to our next topic. No stranger to controversy. Kanye West. He goes by Ye now, but of course they still label. He'll always be Kanye West, to some of us. But this was an interesting article. Kanye West apparently has no record company or publishing deal. How will he release music? And I know there's a lot we can kind of unpack here. We still want to maybe keep it to about 10 minutes or less, but I will just kind of open up and say, obviously this thing, where the article's performative variety is very kind of left-wing Hollywood, so we at least get some perspective. But basically, I'm not going to read all this, but we can basically at least sort of kind of give our thoughts on it. Okay, Kanye West, blah, 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 is currently without a record label or music publisher. Def Jam and Sony Music both are out of contract with them. Def Jam owns copyrights to his recording up to some time in the mid 2000s. It's confirmed that the company, his deal ended with them last year. As with RCA R. Kelly, the company will continue to own and distribute his catalog and profit from it. Def Jam presumably owns the recorded music rights to his early recordings for decades to come, although it's clear when the post-2013 releases will be up for a new distribution deal. So, basically, Conspiracy Brother, you can give your thoughts first. I got a lot to say as far as Kanye. Obviously, his, what they label as anti-Semitic behavior or, tirades. There's a lot to break down from that. I will say that the thing that kind of frustrates me about Kanye is that he doesn't always, he has the right overall ideas. He's speaking on the very things that Michael Jackson and Prince talked about as far as the certain powers in the industry who happen to be Jewish, who literally control, rape, starve the artists and keep them in chains, literally. Prince and Michael have had songs about it. And I think Ye stated it in a way to really get controversy and attention. He could have stated the individual persons that were behind it who happen to be Jewish, but I think Kanye kind of has a long-term chess play where, he was able to get this amount of attention by presenting it in this way, which is never right to group or stereotype any group of people, but at the same time, that group of people who's responsible for what Ye was talking about, they can't hide behind the veil of just being Jewish, because that's how you see them weaponize basically identity politics. Like, well, we're Jewish, so any criticism you say about us is anti-Semitic. Like, no, you don't have the right. You're not above criticism of your behavior, of your activity. We're not criticizing your race, even though Ye, did that indirectly. So there's a lot to kind of unpack there, but I would like to first get your thoughts, not only Conspiracy Brother, of maybe Ye's, obviously his publishing deals and how all that goes. We can get into the weeds there, or you could kind of just speak to the whole Ye anti-Semitic situation in general.
Well, I honestly, I heard a little bit of what was said on Drink Champs, but I haven't really followed the story a lot.
Yeah, you got to watch the whole 3.5-hour interview.
Yeah.
It's one for the history books.
Yeah, and what I will say that I agree with is that what you said is that what I agree with is that a lot of times any criticism of the Jewish people is considered anti-Semitism in a way that you don't see allowed for anyone else, right? And the knee-jerk reaction whenever there's somebody in a position of prominence is always to say, "We'll take you to the Holocaust Museum," and I feel like, they're allowed to be a protected class in a way that is unacceptable for the world that we live in, right? Because my biggest grievance, like when Kanye West was saying, "Oh, slavery was a choice," whether or not he meant that in a different way than it sounded to the ears, he said slavery was a choice, and a lot of people were rubbed wrong by that, and there was no outrage. When you look at Even him wearing that White Lives Matter shirt personally didn't bother me. I knew Black Lives Matter was a scam when it started,
Mm-hmm.
and never gave them any money, never bought any of their paraphernalia, never supported them as an organization. But people were up in arms about it, and you know, that is their right to be upset. But there was never a pushback. But
Mm-hmm.
when he says that the Jewish community, Jewish people control media, then you're, oh, you know, how dare you? But it's true, and it would be like saying Detroit is a majority black city, and then somebody getting upset about it, right? When you look at the hard numbers, and for me, you know, because I'm conspiracy brother, how I look at it, whenever you're in a situation where you have a large group of people controlling an industry with a similar interest, you're always going to have some fingers, some what is it, a thumb on the scale, right? There's always going to be something that steers the direction of the group as a whole, or the organization they're in charge of.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you look at media, and not just movies, but music, news, newspapers. I was watching a video where a person was naming all the companies that either are owned by Jewish people or controlled by Jewish people in the media, and it's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of them. And it's just
Yeah.
that's just the fact. That's just the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not saying that, you know, that it's necessarily nefarious on its face, but as
Mm-hmm.
I stated, I find if the mainstream media outlets were all black, you would have a skewed perspective of the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Well,
so what happens is, um, you know, they want to make an example out of him, and say what they're saying or do what they're doing, and you know, I just don't know. I don't know. Um, I don't know how the behavior, the swift action against him for what he said disproves what he said, right? Like the Streisand effect. I don't see how the weight of the Jewish community, because I watched a video where this Amici X, where she was, and I'll send it to you so you can check it out if you want to check it out. But she said she got an email from a viewer who was Jewish who said the Jewish community, like, they pressured people to Jewish people to send emails to Adidas. Like 20,000 Jewish people emailed Adidas and said, "Hey, we remember that you guys, like, you know, outfitted the Nazis back in the day, and we won't bring it up, but you need to do what you got to do." And so, like,
mm,
they put their weight on people. They muscle on people because they make 1% of the population. So, what kind of reach and control can 1% of the population have when you don't give black people any kind of consideration, and they're 15% at most, right? Or Hispanics, who are about 15 to 17%, right? You don't give them that type of, or you know, let's look at just different white ethnic groups that are in America who have a greater proportion of people in this country. You don't give them the special attention, right? Why is that? And it's
mm,
because they control the media. They have the opportunity to either elevate or downgrade what you're trying to do in public spaces. And so, again, it's not to say that they're nefarious or bad people or what they're doing is necessarily wrong. I'm just stating that when you allow this much power to be concentrated in so few hands, corruption is and conspiracy is perfect. It's perfectly bred and groomed in those environments. So that's my
mm.
comment.
Well said. Couldn't have put it any better, conspiracy brother. All right, moving on to our last topic as we wrap up here. Little favorite of our, well, I won't say a favorite, but obviously this just popped on the scene yesterday. Suspect in assault at Pelosi's home had posted about QAnon. All right, so this is interesting. I don't know if you had a chance to read this article, or conspiracy brother, you want to just maybe touch on it since you sent this to me. We've been hearing things about, at first this was like somebody who stepped into the home of where Paul Pelosi was home and assaulted him. Then we later find out that this may have been a prostitute, someone who was with him. And all of a sudden, there's more and more evidence coming out. I won't say evidence, but just more hearsay. So why don't you, conspiracy brother? I don't know if you read this article already, or just give us some perspective about where we are with this Pelosi home invasion situation.
So, I guess I could read it, but
yeah. If you want to read it, I could. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the man accused, so that's an image of him right there with the camera. The man accused of breaking into Speaker Nancy Pelosi's California home and severely beating her husband with a hammer appears to have made racist and often rambling posts online, including some that question the results of the 2020 election, defended former President Donald Trump, and I quote QAnon conspiracy theories. David DePape, or DePape, I'm not sure, 42, grew up in Powell River, British Columbia before leaving about 20 years ago to follow an older girlfriend to San Francisco. A street address listed for DePape, or DePape, in the Bay Area college town of Berkeley led to a post office box at a UPS store. DePape was arrested at the Pelosi home early Friday. San Francisco District Attorney Brooke Jenkins said she expected to file multiple felony charges, including attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, burglary, and elder abuse. Stepfather Gene DePape said the suspect had lived with him in Canada until he was 14 and had been a quiet boy. It says David was never violent that I seen and was never in any trouble, although he was very reclusive and played too much video games, end quote. Gene DePape said he hasn't seen his stepson since 2003 and tried to get in touch with him several times over the years without success. Quote, in 2007, I tried to get in touch with his girlfriend hung up on me when I talked to him. End quote. Gene DePape said. DePape said the girlfriend whom his son followed to California was named Gypsy, and they had 2 children together. DePape also has a child with a different woman, his stepfather said. Photographs published by the San Francisco Chronicle on the Friday identified DePape frolicking nude outside City Hall with dozens of others at the 2013 wedding of pro-nudity activist Gypsy Taub, who was marrying another man. Taub did not respond Friday to calls or emails. In 2013 article in the Chronicle described David DePape as a hemp jewelry maker who lived in a Victorian flat in Berkeley with Taub, who hosted a talk show on local public access TV called Uncensored 9/11, in which she appeared naked and pushed conspiracy theories that the 2001 terrorist attack were an inside job. A pair, so let's see. And I think we get the gist of who he was
right.
As a person.
Okay.
Now, what I also have heard is that somewhere around this time, Pelosi's husband, Paul, was arrested again for DUI, crashed his Porsche. And so my opinion was that this may have been released at the same time to try to give some cover to that story, because this will have been the second DUI in about 6 months. What you see now, I mean, just listen to what they said about San Francisco. San Francisco, I've been there once. I went there once, went on vacation with my wife, and it's a kind of a pit. You know what I mean? It's kind of a pit. There are a lot of homeless people around and a lot of hippies, and they're just around. And they use the bathroom on the street, and they're just around. And then they want to have these kind of weird laws, like went to this mall, I forget where it was, this big mall there. And like the bathrooms were like there was all just one bathroom, and like there was no walls or anything for the stalls or whatever. So like when the dudes went to use it, like you just turned around and like you could see the sink from outside.
What the fuck?
And like so this guy was walking around, you could see his privates and stuff. So it was a really weird situation. And so like even like with she was a pro nudity activist, she does this public access show Nude, and like got married Nude. Like San Francisco is a really weird, crazy kind of place because you have this immense wealth, right,
Mm-hmm.
from the tech industry and all that stuff, and then you have this immense homelessness, and they kind of coexist terribly. Like you literally see people like walking over people to get into these like $100 a plate plus restaurants, which I imagine is worse now because of inflation. And like every home, even in the nice neighborhoods, they have like 3 and 4 locks on their doors, and they're like row houses, so they're not yards like traditional yards, but they're like metal gates that like lock. So when you come out of your house in the morning, you can lock your door and still be gated inside of where you live.
Mm-hmm.
And then you unlock that, and then you're like out. It's like a guard, like an iron guard or a metal guard. And so it's just a weird city. And and I think the fact that this happens, I think he didn't use a gun, so I guess that's a win for California's gun laws. He used a hammer, so I guess we'll be banning hammers soon. But you know, there's a win for California's gun laws that he only severely beat Pelosi's husband with a hammer and didn't shoot him, right? But I suppose we'll be banning all claw hammers and ball peen hammers and mallets soon enough. And again, this is chickens come home to roost because she's been in politics. She got in politics in the late '80s, early '90s. Never had a real job in her life. Her father was the mayor of Baltimore, and he was the head of like the Democratic election campaign for Robert Kennedy, and I think he was eventually the mayor of Maryland. I mean, the governor of Maryland, but I can't remember. But she's never had a job in her life before she got elected to Congress, and they elected her to be Speaker of the House because she's rich. She knows a lot of rich people who can give her money and give all her coworkers money, so they don't have to go out and try to raise money in the traditional way, calling a lot of people. So she's crooked. If you ever look up unexpected, I think it's called Unexpected Whales or whatever, they break down her trades. You can track her trades and look at how she trades her stock portfolio. And I mean, she's a crook. Her husband's a crook. Her son, along with Mitt Romney, along with Hunter Biden, along with John Kerry's stepson, were involved in doing business in Ukraine. So just a family of crooks making money off of the sucking off the government teat at our expense. And so, if she was doing her job, I'm sure her constituents wouldn't feel so enraged about her leadership and her husband and the lifestyle they live.
Yeah, man. I think you kind of summed it all up in a nutshell. I think we're going to probably wrap this up. I got a heart out today. But yeah, I mean, you kind of pretty much wrapped it up. Just decades of corruption. Not only the whole chickens coming home to roost. Now, do we know as far as this David the Gabe guy, does he maybe have some ties to the right? Anything like that? Conservative? Maybe, maybe not. But I also think, I don't know. I just think this kind of goes to show that, I mean, he's not like a homeless person off the street, but of course they're going to spin this like, oh, he's a right wing extremist, conspiracy theorist who's like our very threat to democracy. That's why you guys got to go hit the polls and vote blue. So they're going to really spin that narrative out of this, even though, this factors down to a combination of her failed policies and just everything she represents. Whether he had some agenda or not, it just goes to show, like, hey, they're going to use this for sympathy points, October surprise, Hail Mary. That's why you got to go out and vote blue. So it's just very sickening. And once again, I don't wish harm or death upon anybody, even though Nancy and Paul are responsible for plenty of it. I still wouldn't wish any sort of ill will against anybody. At the most, I'd like them to be voted out in jail, like thrown in jail, throw away the key, and all that good stuff. But yeah, man, I appreciate it. Everybody tuning in. Episode 8 in the bag for Uncomfy Truths. Not sure when we'll be back, but we will be around. Definitely follow us on Rumble. I think we're on Rumble, Odyssey. Follow us and keep keep you posted from there. Anything else you want to add, Conspiracy Brother, before we head out?
No, I'll leave it at that, man. Just keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, and pay attention to what's going on around you, because the conspiracy theorists are being proved right every single day. And so, just keep your eyes open.
Yeah. Stay awake. Don't stay woke. Stay awake. All right. See y'all next time. We out.